All right, come in a little closer because it's loud over there and it'll be hard to hear me. So Pluto's really, really tiny. You can see that. Its moon Charon is not that much different in size from it. You can almost think of this as sort of a double planet or double not planet, depending on your perspective there. But so there's so many fun stories to tell over here, but I'll give you a couple. So let's go back to Leverrier and his prediction of Neptune's existence mathematically, right? So what he did was he shut down all that discussion about maybe there's something wrong with Newton's law of gravity, okay? It's fine, Newton's law of gravity is fine. And Leverrier, he's like, yeah, I got this. I got Newton's law of gravity. And then he noticed, heard about this other problem, which was that Mercury's orbit was doing something funny too. He's like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with Newton's laws of gravity. I can fix that too. And he said, yeah, I can explain why Mercury's doing that weird stuff with its orbit. It's because there's another planet sharing Earth's orbit, but on the exact opposite side of the sun, which is why we never see it. He even gave it a name, Vulcan, which is where Star Trek got it from, right? And yeah, he was totally convinced Vulcan explained Mercury's orbit, although the correct explanation for Mercury's weird orbit is Newton's law is wrong, right? This is where general relativity gives a different prediction from Newton's law of gravity, and general relativity is right. It predicts Mercury's orbit correctly, and Newton's laws does not. But still inspired by that past success, other people were watching Neptune's orbit and said, gosh, Neptune's doing some weird stuff too, and predicted that there must be another planet tugging on Neptune, so they called it Planet 9, and people started searching for it. This guy in particular named Clyde Tombaugh was looking for Neptune, and so he looked at all the spots where this Planet 9 was supposed to be, and he couldn't find anything. But eventually he kept looking, and kind of far away from where it was supposed to be, he found something, Pluto. Everybody naturally assumed that's the planet. That's why Pluto was called a planet to begin with. But you can see it's really tiny. It can't explain any discrepancies in Neptune's orbit. So what explains the discrepancies in Neptune's orbit? They were measurement errors. They don't exist. Neptune's orbit's just fine. It's following what you expect it to follow. So Pluto got discovered because of a mistake looking for an accident, right? So it's kind of a weird story. But that was why Pluto got its planetary status to begin with, is everybody assumed it had to be big. And how do you know it's small, right? If you just see a dot in your telescope, there's no real way to know. You don't know until Charon, the moon, is discovered in 1978. That's the first time we get an accurate mass for Pluto and realize it's 1% the mass of the Earth. So there had been a move to kick Pluto out of the Planet Club for a long time, but it became official in 2006. There's still people fighting it, but that's okay, right? As I always explain to my students, if I show you a picture of a waterway, how do you know whether it's a river, a stream, or a creek? You don't, right? You just decide, that one I'm going to call a river, and that one I'm going to call a creek. It's the same with planets and dwarf planets. Whatever. Pluto doesn't care, which is why it's out here. In 2006, we had on the National Mall there, people spontaneously left all these notes and flowers and things around Pluto. It was pretty funny. But yes, and especially now that we have the New Horizons image, it has a planet-like look. In fact, my friend Alan Stern, who ran the New Horizons mission to Pluto, he's one of the people who insists it should be called a planet. It's like, well, but Alan, what's your criterion for planet? He's round. Round is a planet. I go, well, then there's dozens of planets. I go, and he goes, yep. I said, what about Jupiter's moons? He goes, they're planets too. So my argument with him is just basically on the how many things you want kids to memorize. Eight's pretty reasonable. Throw in a 9 if you feel like it. But if you ask them to memorize all these other small round things, plus round becomes a tough criterion anyway. We already have that with the dwarf planets, which is the one. Haumea is oblong because it's rotating fast. So why, if it's oblong, is it counted as a round dwarf planet? Because if it wasn't rotating fast, it would be round. But you know, you're going to run into like Vesta. Those of you who know the asteroid Vesta, it's not really round, but the reason it's not really round is because a big chunk is taken out by an impact in the southern hemisphere. So if you say, well, if it didn't have that impact, it would be round, so does Vesta get dwarf planet status too? It gets really ambiguous, so I'm pretty happy with the cutoff at 8 planets from an education point of view. But river, stream, creek, it doesn't really matter in terms of space. It is what it is. New Horizons launched in 2006, went past Jupiter in 2007, 13 months later, and took 9 years to get this far. It's still basically the fastest macroscopic object that humans have ever built.